Hello, I'm Mandi McLeod. Welcome to Straight Talk. In this edition, we talk red meat sector strategy. Do our processors have too much capacity and not enough efficiency? The report commissioned by Beef and Lamb points the finger at stock agents. What does this mean for the future of our red meat sector? New water measurements introduced last November mean farmers will be paying more in compliance costs if they take more than 5 litres per second. Does it really add up to an improvement on management of a vital resource and better on-farm management? And farm debt, whose problem is it really? Are we spending too much time romanticising the ideals of a life on the land instead of viewing farming as a hard-nosed business? Joining me today is Hanna, an agribusiness law specialist, and Rob McNab, a former chair of the Mid-Northern Beef and Lamb Council and a consultant. Welcome, guys. Now, Rob, as reported in Straight Furrow, it looks like this red meat sector strategy is giving a bit of a hammering to stock agents. What do you think? Is this fair?
I think it's important to realise that it's still a draft strategy, and it's a great opportunity to look at some of the things that are within our industry. We should really be concentrating on where the value lies, not just on where the costs are. We can't be a cost-plus mentality anymore. We've got to extract value from our important resource. So if it comes out that stock agents add value, great. If they're adding a cost without returning value, we need to look at that.
Speaking of cost, Matt, this report cost $500,000 to the farmers. Do you think that this is going to give value back to our farmers?
Well, I think the simple answer to that is commissioning the report is only an initial step. What really is important is actually implementing the recommendations, and New Zealand is littered with hundreds of reports commissioned by all sorts of groups that are never implemented. So I think from the sector's point of view, we need to make sure that whatever recommendations come out are implemented. I entirely agree with you, Robert. The thing I'd be focusing on is the price that we obtain for the product that we sell into the market, rather than trying to sort of hammer down stock agents, which are a very small part of the cost of the whole chain. They're really not the problem, I wouldn't have thought.
It's important to realise that this report is actually a partnership between government, the meat industry and the farmers through Beef and Lamb. So we've got the 4 important players there, and now it's up to the farmers, I believe, to actually say, well, we'll take this report and do something about it, because the rest of the country is looking for them to do something.
Is it the farmers though, Matt, do you think, or do we really just need to get our processors around in a locked room and sort out the overcapacity issue?
Well, you know, in the end, we're selling a product into a market, so we need to make sure that we're getting the best value for that product at the highest value. So it's really up to the industry, I would have thought, to come together and work out how they're going to extract that value in what is currently a declining market. It's declining because the farmers aren't getting a sufficient return, and therefore there's no supply coming into the chain. So you'll just be chasing down an ever-decreasing supply unless you increase the price to induce the farmer to produce more. So you really need to start at the top of the chain rather than at the bottom, I would have thought, and then you'll be able to pay your farmers far more. That's what I would be looking at.
Rob, in your experience, how likely is it that this is actually going to work?
Well, sadly, experience shows us that it'll be just another report that'll sit on a shelf somewhere, and this is where farmers need to look hard at themselves, and rather than sit in a room and say, oh, it can't be done, to stand up and say this has to be done and make the hard decisions. May have to invest in their industry, may not, whatever it takes is to say that our position has got to be better. So it needs extremely strong leadership.
Haven't we heard this before?
Well, I think we have heard it before, and we've heard it in all sorts of industries. I mean, we're really familiar with the success of the Fonterras, the Norgates and Vanderhaens, who had a vision and who had guts. Those guys, really had guts. And we've heard of the success with Zespri. We have a similar problem in the forestry sector, where we chase log prices. We compete against each other, and it's the lowest price wins to the export order. So we really need to recognise these problems in the meat industry and say, well, look, these are fundamental issues. Hey, let's change the fundamentals.
I guess to me though, what it seems, Rob, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure you will, We know what the problems are and we know what the issue is, but in all the years that I've been, aware of this, nothing seems to be done about it. So does it come down to leadership, or are we just saying that sheep and beef farmers are gutless and they're not strong like, you talk about the dairy industry and Zespri and things like that, Rob?
I think what we need to do is take the strength of the sheep and beef farmers that you identified there, and they're incredibly strong in the resilience they show in the climate and the environment they have to work in, and take them and say, you need to be strong in other parts of your business, and move away from being just popular, just somebody there saying this needs to change and this needs to change this way, follow me. And Matt has given examples of where it's happened in other industries. Mm-hmm. And yes, there can be times where you get a bit of a hard time of doing it, but the general good improves. So I'd never call a sheep and beef farmer a gutless person, but what I'd say is they need to show more fortitude in different areas.
That's a really nice way of putting it.
But they can't have fortitude, to be honest, in a very dispersed way. It's not possible for them to individually to make that change. So the change really should be led either by industry recognising the long-term value, or you're going to have someone within government saying, look, these resources which we produce in New Zealand are where New Zealand needs to go. Those are our strengths. We need to invest part of the $250 million a week which we are borrowing to prop up the economy in all sorts of other ways. We need to invest in what is really important to New Zealand.
So talking about propping up the economy, let's move on to farm debt. And Rob, I want to throw this one to you first. Do you think that recently we've seen a number of farmers elevated almost to celebrity status who have essentially gone into receivership? Are we spending enough time focusing on what went wrong rather than playing the blame game?
I think that everybody needs to be honest about the real situation. I saw a term the other day, a $47 billion hangover, and that hangover came after a pretty strong party. So we need to be honest about where we are. We need to be honest about what can happen to fix things, because they need to be fixed. This problem's not going to go away. And it means that people are going to have to make hard decisions within their own businesses. And I can't understand why farming should be any different from any other business that requires capital from an outside source.
Matt, you've invested in some businesses. How do you treat those? And I dare say you don't have any debt issues.
Well, look, I think that the main issue for farming is that, as it was put to me by a very successful bank manager, we've had the party, now we've got to pick up the bottles. And that's an important issue. You've got to tidy up the mess you created.
But how does that work when the mess has been created by a flow-on effect? Somebody else has gone broke.
Well, you're talking about a rogues gallery of what public opinion, and I think that we should really distance the discussion about how to fix the problem with those people, because they are a bit of a distraction. We need to get down to looking at what are the fundamentals again. We're talking about a business that needs to stand on its own in terms of an operating profit, and not on the basis of capital gain. I mean, we hear this over and over again. Now is a perfect time with decreasing land values to actually address that issue, to address the fundamental issue that we shouldn't be farming for capital gain, and maybe we should be introducing some sort of capital gains tax, because it's an opportunity right now where no one is focusing on the capital gain of their property to say, look, it's a fundamental change in business here, we want profits. There's nothing wrong with profits.
Yep. Profits are good.
Profits are good.
Profits are good. Profits are great. Profits are fantastic. Thanks, guys. After the break, with recent increases in wool prices, why aren't farmers happy with the new ownership structure opportunities available to them? And Aussie supermarket giants slash the price of milk. What will this mean for our dairy farmers? Stay with us when we return for more Straight Talk. Welcome back to Straight Talk. The new player to the wool industry, Wool Partners Cooperative New Zealand, appears to have polarised both farmers and pundits alike. Rob, what are your views on the current state of play in the wool industry?
Well, Mandy, I'm really sick of a group of farmers getting together and saying how bad the wool industry is, and yet they're given an opportunity to do something about it and to participate in it, and the apathy that's out there of, well, I might get round to it, I'm over it. We need to actually have a good hard look at ourselves and say, if we keep doing what we've been doing, then we'll always get what we've always had. So we've got to do something about it. So Wool Partners Cooperative, even though it closes, the offer closes today, farmers need to reach inside themselves and say, yep, I'm going to back my industry. I'm going to back my farm. I'm going to back my business.
Matt, from a legal perspective, what do you think about the share offer that's been put out by Wool Cooperative? Is it something that you'd be encouraging your wool clients to invest in?
Oh, absolutely. I think you've got to invest in your own industry. If you don't invest in your own industry, you don't believe in it. And I think, you know, you've got to consider what the cost of the share offer is against what you might lose in profitability in the future. You simply just do a quick risk analysis. If you continue to do nothing, you continue to lose money. So you've got to say, look, there has got to be a better way, and invest in your own business and have one collective voice, one brand, one marketing strategy, and out you go into the world and make as much money as you can out of it.
Yeah, because a diverse strategy hasn't worked for us in the last 10 years.
No. Now, I've been criticised since I've come into the wool industry 18 months ago, or the sheep and beef industry, I guess, 18 months ago, for getting really ramped up about wool. I can see endless possibilities for it. And Rob, probably, you know, some of your clients, potentially, have laughed at me. You know, the older farmers just cannot buy into the fact that wool can make a comeback. What do you say?
Oh, look, wool is going to be an important part of the fibre source going forward. It's got intrinsic values of being organic, renewable, it's farmed and harvested by people who are passionate about it. There's a great story to be told about it. We've seen that with the merino, with Icebreaker. It's got everything going for it, apart from the people that make it just can't be bothered with it. So it's got a great future. I couldn't agree with you more. And it has to have a future. My father used to tell me that a third of the income used to come from wool. It'd be a huge difference to my business if 15 to 20% came from wool.
Oh, heck yeah. It would make a big difference even to my business to know that I wasn't just getting a woolly jersey off the first cut and paying the shearers bills.
Well, it's not a dissimilar issue to the meat industry, is it?
Yep.
It's a very similar issue, and you've got to just take control of your industry. You've got to have leadership, and you've got to get out there and sell your product. I mean, there are niche players in the wool industry who've done very, very well. They've been recognised, Untouched World, recognised by the UN. Why can't the whole industry?
Fantastic business.
Yeah, why can't they all be recognised?
And look, I was in China 2 years ago, and there was a wool scourer in China saying he could not get enough of Australian and New Zealand wool. And you come back here and you just think, what are we doing wrong? If we've got a Chinese guy saying he needs more and he's one of the biggest wool scourers in Asia, hello?
I think one of the key fundamentals there, and you've touched on it there with the Untouched World, is that farmers don't know their market anymore. And the only way we'll get to know that market and get some real value about it is if we have an ownership stake that takes all the way to the marketplace. And that's why Wool Partners Cooperative is very important, because if we can get in touch with that market again, they will beat down the door to buy our produce, because we produce fantastic quality wool and red meat proteins.
Well, all I can say is to the Wool Cooperative, my cheque's in the mail. Hey, now, moving on to irrigation in Canterbury. Recently, in November, anyone who was taking more than 5 litres per second is now going to have to measure their outflow. What do you think this is going to have on farming in Canterbury, Rob?
We can't have prosperity and a nice, good feeling at the same time. That's a reality. What we have to do is marry the two together and find out if 5 litres per second is actually going to make a difference. Where's it going to make a difference? Is it worthwhile, or is it just an implement that might be used just to check on something? Let's get real about it and say, well, what do we need to have? Perhaps reward people on their efficiency of using the water. If they can use 5 litres a second and produce 1,200 kgs of milk solids per hectare, allow them to do that. But if they're taking 5 litres per second and only producing 800 milk solids per hectare, perhaps they need to be looked at. So let's try and get some reality into the mix of where some of this compliance is coming from.
Matt, from a legal perspective, how easy is compliance going to be?
Well, I think the system's pretty efficient, to be honest. They're going to use the existing regulations. What they've said is they're not going to, or the existing law enables you to impose conditions exterior to consents, which is pretty efficient. It means you've got a uniform system right over New Zealand, and I think that's really good. It's one of the downfalls of our system is we have all these different plans and things all over the show. So at least we've got some uniformity. I'm pretty much in favour of collecting data to measure what use of a very valuable resource is occurring, simply because it gives you a tool in terms of allocation. And there are a number of aquifers over New Zealand where, particularly in horticultural areas, where they do measure it and they do allocate it according to what the reserve is, so that you don't get overuse, you don't end up penalising everyone by a new player, for instance, coming along and drawing way too much water close to the source. So we're managing it on that basis. So the compliance costs are, I guess, a metre and someone to audit that metre. And given the value of the resource, I think that's probably not a huge cost.
Well, given that our kiwi fruit orchards, especially around Waikato Bay of Plenty, are having to do all this and having had to have done this for many years now, are the guys down in Canterbury complaining over nothing, or do you really think it's going to be quite an infringement, Rob?
Will it be an infringement? It'll be interesting to see how it pans out. I'd probably take exception with Matt about small compliance, because it seems to be small compliance upon small compliance upon small compliance. So at some stage there needs to actually be a rationalisation of saying, are we just collecting data for the sake of collecting data, or fulfilling an annual plan? Let's relate this to what is the worth of the resource, what is the volume of the resource, and what effect is it actually having on both profitability and effect on the environment. Start to get some reality around those. So will it be a major for the Canterbury farmers? Time will tell.
Mm-hmm. What about recently in Australia, the Aussie supermarkets have absolutely slashed the price of milk. And recently on the Country 99 website, they were talking about how Prime Minister John Key is talking about bringing together some of the agricultural departments. Will that, bringing together those departments, allow some stick at our end against the supermarkets for slashing the price of milk? And will it do what you're saying, Rob, about perhaps getting a bit of rationalisation of compliance?
That's an interesting aspect about the supermarket slashing the price of milk, especially with today with the Northland District Health Board asking for the price of milk to be reduced by Fonterra. I think what we need to look at is we go right back to what we started this discussion about, is where is the value in the chain? Now, if the value of the chain is in producing milk, then they should be rewarded for it. If the value in the chain is putting that milk on the supermarkets, they should be rewarded for it. So let's examine the value and see exactly where the value is, and whether or not there is possibility that the value can be shifted in amongst the chain, and reward the buyers.
Raw milk is not a significant part of Fonterra's business, and raw milk, of course, only lasts a number of days, and supermarkets use products of all sorts to
as a loss leader.
As a loss leader. You know, we're well aware of that. I don't think that issue is going to drive down the international price of commodities, of powders, which most dairy companies are relying on for profitability. And they've got a huge range of products which they sell. So it's one activity which an Australian supermarket is undertaking a small part of the market. So we should really be thinking about the fundamentals of businesses and considering those rather than some ad hoc measure.
Red herrings that are sent to just distract us.
Yeah, I don't think it's an issue.
And so what about, you know, and I think what I'm hearing both of you guys say is that we need a greater degree of unity and leadership at our farm level. Is that
I think it's right throughout.
Yep.
I think it's right throughout the sector and into central government.
Right through to central government, but I would take the stance that it needs to start at the farm gate. Every single day I hear farmers saying that they're not happy with their situation, and every single day I see farmers not doing a thing about it. There actually needs a leadership from that farm sector and you'll find that leadership will multiply into central government, multiply into regional government, and then through to central government, and then you'll see some prosperity coming into the agricultural sector, and then you'll see New Zealand begin to prosper a little bit as well. So the answer lies within the farm gate, and the answer lies with the farmer.
Great, thanks for that, guys. Coming up after the break, we asked Rob and Matt what's pushed their buttons. Find out what fires them up. Will it be a rant or will it be a rave? We will reveal all after the break. Welcome back to Straight Talk. It's time now for our weekly rant or rave. Matt, what's got you hot under the collar or glowing with glee?
I'm not glowing with glee, but I think my main issue at the moment is the leadership of this country and where we're going in terms of where we earn our money. We really are, you know, an agricultural business as such. We're not earning it from forestry or red meat and wool and dairying. We're earning it from tourism related to those attributes. And I think we really need to focus on that as a country. We really need to recognise our strengths and take those opportunities and get our GDP up, really drive growth. And that in the end, while it can come from growers, it really needs to come from central government, people who recognise that that's where our strengths are. It is not in being a financial sector at the bottom of the world. We're never, ever, ever going to be a New York or a London. We should stop dreaming about that, and we should recognise that we have these strengths and build on them. There's a shortage of food in the world, there's a shortage of raw materials. Let's produce the best, let's sell them for the highest price, but let's do it together and have a government that says, look, take the best of these things. These are the steps we must take as a nation. Let's measure where we are in the process. And then we'll be able to say, look, Australia's per capita income is X and ours is Y. And we're starting to close the gap because we've got these milestones and we've got some leadership. But without that, we won't make it. We can't make it. Mm-hmm. We've got to compete on our strengths.
Very impassioned rant there, Matt. Thank you.
Yeah.
Rob.
Well, I'm going to pick up on what Matt said, and I'm going to be even more harsh. I'm going to say the leadership has to start down on the farm.
Absolutely.
We have fantastic, committed, passionate people about producing milk, red meat and fibre, and yet when the opportunities present themselves, they say, oh, it can't be done. Enough of that now. We're at where we're at because of that attitude. The difference between the GDP of Australia and New Zealand is down to attitude. It can be done and it will be done. Stand up and get it done. And don't take any prisoners. We all know what needs to happen, both in the red meat industry, and we also need to know what happens. Know what happens in the wool industry. But people are saying, "Oh, it can't be done. Oh, I don't like this." Just get on and get it done. Believe in yourself. Believe in your industry, and get out there and do it.
Do you think it's a case of it's not about it can't be done, but it's not my problem, I can't do anything about it? Because that's kind of almost what I hear. It's this buck passing, and that would be my rant, is that people want to pass the buck to get somebody else to do it. It's, I can't do it. And I think my biggest one has to be to all of you wool farmers who wear techno fleece. Stop. If you're going to be in the press, if you're going to be on telly, wear wool. It's amazing. That's my rant. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. Sick of it. And I've got a rave too, however. I've got a rave about all of those people that have gone out and helped farmers in the time of need through the floods, the droughts, the earthquakes. The Rural Support Trusts have been an amazing support network for the agricultural industry, and I don't think actually they're recognised enough.
I'd agree with that. I personally myself and professionally have come across the Rural Support Trust, and it's a great resource because there is hard times out there in the farming industry and the farming businesses, and it's just a real brick in the wall just to have that to come back to. So I'd agree with you on the rave about Rural Support Trust.
And I feel quite confident that somewhere you're wearing wool, Rob, to support your sheep farm. We won't talk about where it might be, but I'm sure you've got it on.
It's not that sort of show.
Thank goodness for that. Matt and Rob, it's been an absolute pleasure having you guys on the show today. It's been an awesome conversation, and I look forward to having you back again at some stage. That wraps up our latest edition of Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Furrow. Thanks to you at home for watching, and remember to check out my blog online at www.country99tv.co.nz. I'd love to hear from you. Catch you next week, and in the meantime, keep on talking straight.